because of him being that 32nd pick, and normally that being a first round pick, there was like a discrepancy on how much of that fourth year would get guaranteed, because normally second round picks don't get as much as he got, which I mean makes sense. He was the 32nd pick of the draft, so he got 70% of his final year of his rookie contract fully guaranteed. Which I mean, to me, it should be 100%. Like anyway, but that's a different discussion. So glad to see that got done and he can get on the field. We expect that he's going to be on the field quite a bit. I want to talk about that. I saw, we had been kind of touching on like that's going to be one of the intriguing things to watch with the secondary, how they deploy them, especially when you get into like nickel and dime sets. Joey Porter Jr. I think is going to play, and he's going to play a lot, and he's going to play early on. Patrick Peterson played 0 snaps last year in the slot, yet we're just like assuming that he's going to be the slot corner for this team when they go into nickel and dime. I don't know what the team is envisioning right now. But again, like, I mean, I've said it for months. I just don't see how, when you look at the state of their cornerback room, their best isn't Joey Porter Jr. and Levi Wallace on the outside with Patrick Peterson inside. I just don't see a different way when you look at those cornerbacks.
What do you mean? They have veteran Chandon Sullivan to go into the slot. Obviously, the snaps mean that he's good. No, I agree. I don't see another way around it. And even if it takes Patrick Peterson a little bit to get used to being in the slot, I still think that's worth it over just putting Chandon Sullivan in there just because he has the experience in the slot. I would rather have the best talent out there than the guy who has played the position the most, to be completely honest. Maybe that's a backwards way of thinking about it, but I think someone as skilled as Patrick Peterson and has the veteran knowledge of Patrick Peterson would be able to figure it out quickly, and I would be more okay with the little bit of growing pain he could have at the position, especially because if he could figure out in training camp, then that's fine, and in the preseason too. But he's
done it in the past. It's just not last year, and it's only like 21 snaps over the last 2 seasons. So it's asking him to go back and do something he really hasn't done much of since Arizona.
Yeah, and we're talking about him doing it full time. That's why I mean, like, it's going to take an adjustment period for him to be basically a full-time slot corner if you're assuming that Joey Porter Jr. and Levi Wallace are going to be your outside guys. But I do think, and I agree with you, that is your best secondary with those 3 guys in those positions. I don't think that guys like Chandon Sullivan are going to bring much value. I'm sure they're nice depth pieces, and they can go in there in a pinch. But based especially off of last year, that's not a guy you want in your slot. He wasn't good. So, yeah, I think that Joey Porter Jr. is going to be playing a lot. I think that he's easily – like, I think we talked about this whenever the draft was over. We were talking about who we think could be starting first on like game 1, whether it would be Broderick Jones or Joey Porter Jr. And we both said that we thought that Joey Porter Jr. was the easier pick to say that they're going to start from game 1. And I think that's because you look at the positions that they have, the people that they have at the position of corner, and then you look at like tackle. It's easier to see how Broderick Jones is going to be a backup and Joey Porter Jr. is the starter. I think it's the position of need for the talent that they have right now. That's the easiest one. So Joey Porter Jr. definitely going to be the starter in my book.
Yeah, I mean, and we know that Mike Tomlin's going to make the rookies earn it. But to your point, Dan Moore Jr. is opening up camp as the number 1 left tackle, which we fully expected to be the case. I think the question is going to be like, how are the reps? Is it like a 1A, 1B, or is it like Dan Moore Jr. is clearly right now the starter and Broderick Jones is running second team reps? Like, I think it's going to be very telling, not just how we start, because is whatever, but as we go through training camp to see how it progresses, to see if it gets more close to like a 50-50 split. But yeah, I mean, Joey Porter Jr., let me throw Cory Trice in there too, just with the state of the secondary and that cornerback room, just because I look at him very similar to Joey Porter, just in terms of like, if you were building cornerbacks, those are probably what they look like. And Cincinnati had a player last year, Trey Flowers, who they used as kind of like because teams a lot of time, and you're going to see the Steelers do this with Freiermuth this year, especially with getting Washington, flex their tight end out and almost use them as like a slot receiver. Flowers and what I think Cory Trice could do for this team could be that like eliminator within the slot for tight ends. So that is why it gets my mind going. And now all of a sudden I do see a path where you get Peterson some snaps on the outside. I think you could see him play some safety. It's like, I think he is going to move around. I mean, he's talked about it, but I fully expect that to happen. But yeah, I think Cory Trice, depending on how camp goes for him, he looked really good at mini camp. But, it was football and shorts. Now that we're getting pads on, I think it's going to be a little bit more telling. Yeah. I think he could have a role as well within this defense because of, again, I keep going back to it, but like I looked at this cornerback room, there's opportunities to be had there. Yeah.
And I mean, when you look at the pedigree of Cory Trice, a lot of people would say pedigree. What are you talking about? He was a late round pick. Well, this is a guy that was almost consensus a top 100 player in the draft prior to his injury. If you're just looking at like what he did when he was on the field, this was a guy that was going to be at least a fourth, if not a third round pick. So I think for sure Cory Trice could see some playing time, and he has that similar build, similar to Joey Porter Jr. And it was clear, and we talked about this when they drafted him, that the Steelers had a vision for the type of corners that they want in their defense right now. When you look at what they got with Trice and Joey Porter Jr. and bringing in Patrick Peterson, it's very clear that they want tall, long corners that are very athletic. And so, yeah, I agree absolutely that Trice could have a play in the cornerback room. I think that he'll be, to me, the first one off the field. If you're having Patrick Peterson in the slot, outside corners as Levi Wallace and Joey Porter Jr., he's the next man up on the outside. Yeah, so he's going to be battling with like a James Pierre, I guess, to kind of be that next guy up on the boundary. But to your point, I guess it is kind of weird to throw the word pedigree around with a 7th round pick, but I had him as a round 3 player. I think a lot of people had him going within that range. I was, if they would have taken him instead of Washington at 93, I wouldn't have questioned it. And then I absolutely wanted him with that Herbig pick at 120 or whatever it was, or something within that range. No, they moved down from 120. So wherever they ended up picking Herbig at, 131, that's something. Yeah. 130 something, but that's where instead I would have been cool at 241 in round 7. Yeah. I mean, it's like outside of Spencer Anderson, because I think Herbig is going, I don't expect to see him get a ton of snaps on the defense. I think he's going to play a lot on special teams. Outside of like Spencer Anderson, I think this rookie class, while maybe not like right away for all of them, I think they're going to have an impactful 2023. A lot of these guys. I think Spencer Anderson's really the only one that I wouldn't expect to see. I think if you do see him, something went pretty wrong on the interior of that offensive line. Yeah, because Spencer Anderson, and no shade to him, but we were on here like, who is this guy? We don't know who they are. Yeah. I mean, I looked into him and I was like, okay, like these are the types of guys that get drafted here in this spot because he's played all 5 spots at Maryland. So makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I mean, to your point, this Steelers rookie draft, I said it at the time, on paper, it's arguably the best draft that we've seen in our lifetime. And then you look at just those first 4 picks. Maybe Darnell Washington is not going to be the starter because we still have Pat Freiermuth. But in his own way, he's going to be a starter, in my opinion. But because in certain block, like if it's a run blocking situation for a tight end, he's the guy to go in there. And so when you look at him, and then you look at Keanu Benton, Joey Porter Jr., and Broderick Jones, those are 4 guys that, if they're not going to be a starter, are going to be impactful right away for the Steelers. And we haven't really had a draft like that. There's been like 1 or 2 guys in an entire draft class. But we're talking about like 5 or 6 guys that, whether it's going to be offense, defense, or special teams, are going to have significant playing time from game 1, which is pretty significant for a class as a whole. I'm going to go on the record right now, and then we can look back at the end of the season and see how close I was. Darnell Washington's going to play somewhere between 35 to 40% of this team's offensive snaps. I think it's going to be like, because he's the only one that can block. Yeah, it's going to be like Vance McDonald when Ebron was here. Like, Ebron was considered the starter. Vance McDonald was still playing like 40% of the snaps. Yeah. No, so I think you're absolutely right, because that's what we talked about pre-draft, is that if they're going to address tight end, it needed to be a guy like Washington, because they don't have a tight end that is the clear-cut blocker right now. They have pass-catching tight ends. They don't have run blockers. They got it with Darnell Washington, so I think it makes perfect sense. There's no need to have Freiermuth in there in a run situation where you're running the ball. I don't think that there's a need to have Freiermuth on the field. Yeah, and please don't come into the comments about Pat Freiermuth being the 4th best pass blocking tight end. If he's blocking on a passing play, I'm already upset.
I think it's per PFF, which I'm not even debating that. I'm not debating if he's a good pass blocker or not. Why is he pass blocking instead of running a route?
That's what I mean. Is like, if he's not on the field to run a route, then what's he doing? We already said that he's the best slot receiver on the team.
Yeah, I do. I'm excited about. I like keep having to remind myself that Allen Robinson's on this football team, but you know,
we get Calvin Austin this year.
Yeah, hopefully. But I think with Allen Robinson, I don't think he needs to be a high volume pass catcher. Like, I mean, I feel like that's pretty easy to say because I don't think there'd be a high, pass volume offense to begin with. And there's only one football. He's probably like the fourth option in the pass game. But I think okay, I already kind of went out on a limb and threw out a percentage for Washington. I think Allen Robinson's got a shot to lead this team in touchdowns. And it's only going to be like somewhere 8 to 10, but I think he's going to have like a third or fourth of his catches be touchdowns.
I mean,
it's going to be like Jericho Cotchery in whatever year that 2012,
he's not going to get a lot of touches, but they're all going to be very significant, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. All on like third down or for a touchdown.
I could see that. And it's going to be funny because Deontay's going to lead the team with like 112 receptions and 2 touchdowns.